in, will be good. Okay, great. So hopefully everybody can hear me. Please chime in the chat. If not, welcome to our participants and to our panelists for today. And thank you all for joining us for this Linked Open Data Community of Practice Town Hall. So a couple housekeeping items. One, we do have everybody should be here muted, and we ask that you submit. Great. Thank you for Elizabeth for letting me know that you can hear us. We do ask that you submit questions through the Q&A function, and we'll take those questions at the end after everybody has had all of our panelists have had a chance to speak. We are recording the session, and that will be available on the IGeLU website by the end of the month. So we're thrilled to have such a great turnout today. And I do want to take the opportunity then to put in a plug for ELUNA Learns sessions. There is one on ILL, I think, next week, but perhaps more pertinent to this group is they are planning ELUNA Learns sessions in January to be about some linked data and AI and also technology changes regarding the Libris products. So I want to encourage people to look for that when you see that, or if you have ideas that you would like to present on when those calls for presentations come out, please feel free to do that. So with that, I want to introduce our topic and speakers. So we have a full house today. So I'll introduce everybody right now so we can go through the presentations one after another. We'll be starting with Adina Marciano, who is product manager for linked open data at Libris, and she'll be giving an overview of the Libris linked data roadmap. And then Jim Hahn, the head of metadata research at the University of Pennsylvania, will be giving an overview of BIBFRAME and Sinopia. And Jim and his colleagues, Yoon Lee, who's the head of cataloging at University of Pennsylvania, and Kaylin Blunt, who's the metadata project librarian at University of Pennsylvania, talk about some of their efforts to normalize BIBFRAME from Sinopia, and also talk about ideas for exporting to systems and discovery. And then we'll have TJ Cow from the University of California, Davis, and they're going to demonstrate how they're handling record relationships between preceding and succeeding titles, and looking at those things. And again, we want to have about 15 minutes for questions. So please, if you have questions as they come up, go ahead and put them into the Q&A. But again, we'll handle all of those at the end. So with that, I will turn it over to Adina, and welcome. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Catherine. So just another brief, quick introduction. Sorry, you can see my screen, right? Okay. All right, so I'm happy to be here. My name is Adina Marciano. I've been at Libris for 7 months now, and I've been spending a lot of time learning and exploring and understanding what linked data is and how we can implement it into our systems. And it's been very exciting and very interesting and challenging. And I will be happy to share with you in the 10 minutes that I have just a brief overview of what we've been doing together with our focus group and our future roadmap plans. So we all know what the end goal is and the end game of linked data. We all want to get there, but it's not that easy. We have multiple challenges, whether it's global information versus local information, multiple formats, how is it compatible with MARC, how can we build linked data on a large scale to support large systems, and many more challenges. And we have to face all of this. And the way to make it work is not easy, but we are working on it. And our strategy is to work with multiple steps. So it's a multiple step journey, and we are working on each step gradually and keeping in mind where we want to get to. And that way we are basically building everything up. So our first stage is, which is what we're working right now with our focus group, is having core functionalities working in Alma, supporting BIBFRAME with the library management workflows side by side with the MARC records. We have to have In order to make this change, we first have to support the existing processes and workflows. So that is the first stage that we are working on. And in addition to that, we have our second stage, which is expanding these workflows, understanding what would need to be the next stage and the additional workflows needed, in addition to not only existing workflows, but also seeing what special, unique workflows we would need for BIBFRAME in Alma. Looking further ahead, looking on the discovery side of things, we have our next discovery experience, which incorporates linked data experience regardless of the record format. So we are having, whether you have MARC records or BIBFRAME records, we have new capabilities that should be released in May, and I will talk about those later. And looking beyond to the next stage would obviously be embracing true linked open data capabilities, whether it's collaborative cataloging, info cards, and knowledge graph. And we are, again, working gradually on each of these stages at the same time, while keeping in mind the need for support of multiple formats. We have a lot of thoughts and directions that we're checking on how to support the multiple formats, but it's not an easy process, and we are definitely keeping it in mind. So we are working with our linked data focus group. We have 11 institutions participating, and I'd like to thank them all for their hard work. We are working together to reach our end goal for May 2024 at the moment, which is having the end-to-end workflow from Sinopia to Alma to Primo. So the workflow is having the records cataloged in BIBFRAME in Sinopia, where we have an integration, thanks to Jim, with exporting the records to our catalog, or to your catalog in Alma, where you can see the records, you can test the workflows, and have the BIBFRAME record function the same as any other record for the management needs in Alma. And of course, having the records displayed in Primo as part of the next discovery experience, but also as a basic record. So that would be the first stage. Our second stage is understanding that the journey for linked open data is a complex one, and some of our users will choose to work side by side with MARC and linked open data. And that way we have to allow the support for experiences that will, linked data experience that will support both MARC records and BIBFRAME records, or any linked open data format for that matter. And if you're cataloging linked open data, you will be working with Sinopia, having the records sent to Alma, where they will be combined together with the MARC, again, in the existing workflows and in the expanding workflows. And we will also have the ability to view all records in Primo and as part of the next discovery experience. So a little bit about the next discovery experience. We are, again, incorporating linked data capabilities for records, regardless of, for all records, regardless of the format, allowing the users to have in the search a person autocomplete. If they're searching, if they start typing a name, they will have the options of what is available pop up at the bottom. We will have an info card displaying information that is based on authority records combined with Wikidata information and images, allowing the users to have a brief overview of the person that they're searching for, and the option for an expanded view of the person page, a full person page, having a full display with, again, information from Wikidata, Wikipedia, along with relations that are inside authority records and in their local catalog, whether it's relations between titles and the person, or relationships between different people. So just another brief looking forward. We have a lot of different features that we're working on. I just want to go over a few of them. We understand that a core process for embracing linked open data is to support collaborative cataloging. And in order to do this, we're taking the first half of 2024 to test hosting our own instance of Sinopia, meaning we will create another instance in addition to the Stanford LD4P instance of Sinopia, in order to create a better and broader integration between Sinopia and Alma, allowing our users to have a seamless workflow and to create a platform for collaborative cataloging. Allowing, again, to create possibilities of creating professional groups. If we have multiple institutions of catalogers that their specialty is music, they'll be able to work together and create one group in Sinopia as a collaborative cataloging platform. But again, we are taking the first half to test it, to see if it's durable, stable, and can be scalable. In addition to hosting Sinopia, we are also adding some features similar to the features that will be available in Primo, is info cards and a person entity page. happening throughout the second half of 2024 and the first half of 2025, hopefully, where we will have info cards with brief information based on authority record information and library and Wikidata. And we'll also have the expansion to a broader person page. These will be incorporated as a first stage as part of the all titles staff search, where you will have on every title, the contributors you'll have information about them displayed as an info card and a person page. And in addition, we will be adding them to the metadata editor as to assist catalogers in identifying the people they are cataloging. We have other capabilities that we are adding that aren't listed here, including adding to support the side-by-side and expanding the linked data capabilities for MARC records. We'll be adding URIs and lookups to enrich the MARC records in the metadata editor. And of course, looking further down the line, we will have the capabilities of a knowledge graph integration, allowing supporting to export records from Alma to external knowledge graph systems. Again, we have much more in plan. I think it's definitely a challenge, and we have a lot to do, and we are working hard to reach the first point where we can say we can work with BIBFRAME in production. And for that, I'd like to say thank you to a focus group and all the members here who are working together as me hard to bring this future into reality. So if anybody has any questions, either post in the Q&A. I'm happy to receive emails offline if you want to discuss something, anything further. And I also have a small request for everybody here. We really want to learn a lot more about what linked open data projects each institution is interested in and has run throughout the year, because I know there's been a lot of standalone projects. We'd happy to hear about them. There's a link here. I will post it on the Q&A or in the chat, whatever's available, for a quick short form with contact information. If you can just give us a brief description of your projects, we would love to learn about what interests the community. Right, thank you.
Thanks, Adina. Jim, you are up next. And thanks for the questions, everyone. Again, we're seeing them, so we have questions for you, Adina, at the end.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks, Adina. It's been a great pleasure to work with you and work with all the libraries that are participating in the focus group. Taking a step back here, there's probably a whole group of libraries and librarians and just staff who've maybe in passing only heard of BIBFRAME and Sinopia and maybe haven't had like this very like introductory sort of overview of what is BIBFRAME, what is Sinopia. So what I'd like to do in the next 10 minutes or so is provide this sort of gentle introduction to BIBFRAME, to the Sinopia linked data editor. And hopefully we can all sort of have a common grounding after this talk. So I'll start just by saying that Sinopia is a linked data editor. It's general RDF editing and optimization for BIBFRAME. So its development is work output from the LD4 series of grants led by Stanford and Cornell. It's developed outside of the Alma ecosystem, but it is like a cloud-based thing. So you log in, you could go to Sinopia.io and create a user account. So it's hosted at Stanford presently. It's running as a cloud app on Amazon Web Services. One thing I've been interested in pretty much for the past couple of years is helping librarians to like create resources in Sinopia, but then at the same time, one of the big questions is like the why question. It's like, okay, now that we have data, we're describing data in this RDF editor, like how do we connect that with our ILS? So that's been top of mind, and thankfully there's been some work to address that, and I will get to that in a moment about how the Sinopia data are getting into Alma, but a little bit about sort of what's Sinopia doing. So in Sinopia, we're describing resources, and this is an example. After I've logged in, these are like my recent resources that I've either like modified or viewed. so it is collaborative by nature. Everyone's resources that is contributed in here can be searched and they're viewable. Also, like because you log in with an account, so you have a profile with your user account. So this is linked to the things that I've looked at. But once you have that user account, then that can be linked to an institution. And basically users from the same institution, they can edit each other's resources. But in this example here, so for like University of Chicago, I was looking at my friend Tom, who works for University of Chicago, I was looking at some of the work he did. And I can't, you can see there's no pencil icon here. I can copy it or I can view it, but I can't edit that. Similarly, like for Yale, if I want to see what Yale's working on, they had this super work thing that I was interested in looking at. So that, as you can see, this is an older resource, but I can view it and I can copy it. And so then I can, once I copy it, I could bring it into like Penn's Alma sandbox if I wanted to. So this system makes for like a valuable collaborative environment, both within your library and also anyone who's logging in, which is really excellent. So what's so Sinopia being sort of RDF first and then BIBFRAME optimized, probably asking the question if you haven't been exposed to this yet is, BibFrame, it's looking to support description based on principles from the web, like linked data techniques. And so that means sort of like linked data description is in RDF, but it's also, the vocabulary that is important to our domain, which is, the bibliographic universe. And so there's this focus in BibFrame on the description of entities. And so like here are your major classes in the BibFrame model. We have a work class, instance class, and item class. They, as you can see, they're kind of each has sort of attributes that are associated with those entities. So within the work, that's where you are associating subjects. Then when you get into the instance, you're talking more about format and publisher. Finally, you get down to this less abstract level, more concrete level, where you're talking about a barcode and held by data. Okay, and so that's sort of like the landscape. There's a lot more to dig into. And of course, like the Library of Congress page, if you go to this link here, loc.gov/bibframe, that's a great starting point because they do list a lot of updates because it has certainly evolved over time. And so you can read through the updates. And even as recently, I think is in the past week or two, we've seen some updates to the ontology and transformation code. Okay, so this next section, which will kind of conclude the overview, is really like sort of like how we're piloting connections of like BibFrame RDF resources into Alma. In our case, we're exploring the Alma sandbox, right? So to do this, I'm going to review the work RDF from Sinopia, and this is like a BibFrame work. What's great is you can view this your works in this table view, so you can see like subject, predicate, object. This is basically how RDF models data, and you can look at it in table form. So it's this how these nodes are constructed, and within Sinopia, what you basically do is you link. So there's a work description in the work. You can link it to an instance. I think it's not the work being linked to an instance, depending on your template, may not be required, but you can see that happening here. And then conversely, there's the instance entity description. And here, I believe the templates are still requiring, like if you have an instance, make sure that you're linking it to a work here. So then, as you can see, like you're kind of, you might have a little more data to curate than maybe record-based, but you're really creating these like deep interconnections and using authoritative sources. So there is some value in doing this. And once someone has created this resource, like you can link to their work, so you don't necessarily have to re-describe that. Okay, So exporting, we have our export to catalog button. Here, once you select that, the ILS middleware is activated for sending Sinopia RDF into Alma. And we're using this software from the LD4P3. Actually, the code base had like some good patterns that I was able to adapt for Alma. So the code base itself, it has some starter code for Folio as like a pilot, and then also Symphony pilot moving Mark into Symphony. And we're now using this design with all the Alma libraries that are in the focus group to begin to send data into Sinopia. And so it was rewritten for like some updated Alma BibFrame APIs. So that is our sort of gentle introduction into what we're doing here. I do have some links, and what I'll do is post them into chat here. But essentially, I'll say like a great place to like rub shoulders with people who are actually like doing this work is this PCC Sinopia Cataloging Affinity Group, and they have recordings. So go ahead and look through those recordings if you just want to get started. There's a training page. Some of this might focus on older versions of the interface, but I think the concepts are important. And then you can always go to this Sinopia wiki if you need help getting started there. So I'm gonna stop my share and then drop into the chat some of those links that I just mentioned. And yeah, I will end the introduction there.
Great. Thank you, Jim.
And is this next? Is this the next part?
Yes, yes. Sorry.
Okay, so
Yes, you're still on.
I'm going to jump into a deeper dive now into with my colleagues reviewing some of the processes that we're actually are able to do this. So basically like Sinopia data and Alma data, like how do we process that? The Alma system accepts BibFrame plus some specific markup. And then Kaylin will talk about sort of investigations into generating mark from some of this data and basically the publishing process and what we envision for sort of the hybrid environment. So Sinopia to Alma. I did talk about how this is an RDF editor, but so I mentioned like Sinopia is describing RDF, but there's multiple ways to serialize RDF. And one of the easier serializations here is the TTL or turtle format. That's nice because it's like line by line. But others you might have come across, or these may be new to you. JSON like LD is a serialization of RDF. And triples, you can see here in the dropdown, that's also a serialization. So when you actually, if you were to navigate to a URI from just straight from Sinopia, you'll read that in JSON LD. Basically, you can inspect the other ones here, but one of the serializations we don't have support. Direct support is the RDF XML serialization, and that's what Alma is expecting. Like the API, once we send it in there, it's expecting RDF XML. So we'll need to do a little processing, and I've relied on sort of just existing some existing software libraries, basically to take something that looks like this and then to generate an RDF. This is the Sinopia JSON LD RDF process to RDF XML. What does all that mean? It's the same data. It's the same RDF data. It's just expressed in a different way, serialized differently. When I was first learning like ontology development, and frankly, when I was first learning information modeling and just RDF and XML, I believe I heard this second or third hand that the inventors of RDF understood that it's quite a simple model, but the RDF serialization for XML isn't very pretty to look at. So I think it's like, this is not like this is very like not great for like human processing, but I think and for like an API to read or for computer processing, that's what you would have. And since the Sinopia templates we have are doing BibFrame description, they're strongly enforcing like a BibFrame vocabulary. So overall, the processing steps are pretty minimal, although they need to be done with like a lot of evaluation. So what I was able to do was parse the JSON graph using a Python library, rdflib, and so as a first pass, you can sort of read in the JSON LD and just ask for the serialization. But then we need one last normalization step, which, because it's XML, I actually do some XSLT processing to add some additional data to envelope the resource, which if you take a look here, this is where the RDF starts, but the Alma API is expecting sort of this, you need to specify like what kind of resource this is. So we're posting it to the bib, create bib or update bib API. The resource, you can either specify it's a Library of Congress BibFrame or a Library of Congress instance resource. And then you can go ahead and within this container, you can send it in. And this basically is what it expects for a work resource. There's one other thing that we need to have, and we can basically, this is just a requirement to the Alma APIs, is that make sure that an instance is linked to the work and vice versa. And again, I'll do like some rdflib Python where if it's not present in the graph, I can go ahead and add it to the graph from the instance resource to make sure that the work is pointing to the instance and vice versa. Of course, I don't know ahead of time what the template is, so it's doing some checks. So these are essentially sort of the normalization steps. They're not overly complicated. I try not to make it an overly complicated normalization process. In part, thanks to like Sinopia's use of BibFrame and the use of templates make it pretty easy. And then also because Alma's just expecting BibFrame in this structure that is like the BibFrame ontology. There are pretty straightforward ways to get the data in once it's in the right serialization and has sort of the right, I would say, application specific, sort of API specific needs. And so then we're able to process that. So with that being said, I'm gonna pass it over to Kaylin, who will talk about going from Alma to Discovery.
Thanks, Jim. So I'm going to talk a bit about the testing we're doing for a later stage in the workflow, which is publishing our data from Alma to Discovery. Next slide, please. While working on this transition to include BibFrame and Alma, we also recognize that even when we start working with linked data in production, we'll still be working in an environment with a lot of MARC records, and that MARC and BibFrame will have to coexist. And part of our testing is with that reality in mind. So we're a Blacklight institution, and our MARC records are currently indexed in Blacklight for discovery. And as we begin to work towards having BibFrame and Alma production, we also want to have a way for the data and those BibFrame descriptions to be indexed in Blacklight along with our MARC. So the solution we're currently testing is using Alma publishing profiles to publish BibFrame as MARC to Blacklight. And this also means that as part of that process, we need to test the BibFrame to MARC conversion that occurs during publishing, so we know how the resulting MARC records will display in our catalog. Next slide, please. So one major part of this testing has been exploring the configuration of Alma publishing profiles. And we've been playing around with a couple ways of data enrichment that could take place during the conversion process. So that the first is creating bibliographic normalization processes that can be applied to converted records during the publishing process. And this could be used, for example, to add ISBD punctuation to certain MARC fields like the 245, since the BibFrame descriptions don't have that punctuation. And the second type of enrichment is adding holdings or item data to records converted to MARC. So right now the conversion takes the data in the BIB framework and instance descriptions stored in Alma and creates a MARC record from those. But this means that some of the item information that we currently store in our MARC records, like a collection name or some provenance information, but that doesn't belong in a BIB framework or instance description, is left out of that conversion. So we've done some testing storing more item-specific information in item or holdings records and having that information added to the MARC record during the conversion. And next slide. And once we configure a publishing profile, we publish the converted MARC records to a local FTP server so that we can review the MARC. And currently the Alma publishing profiles are using the Library of Congress BibFrame to MARC converter. So part of our testing involves going through the records field by field and noting the conversion choices made or noting if there are any bugs in the conversion process. And it also means creating some workarounds. So for example, because this is an LC converter, some of the choices made for the records are LC specific, like assigning the LC code automatically in the 003 field. And that's not a bug, but it's also just not appropriate for Penn records. So this is something that could be fixed through a normalization process. And I'll just end with a note that this testing is really an iterative process. So we configure a publishing profile, review the converted MARC records, then go back and re-edit the publishing profile to add other normalization processes or enrichments, and then repeat that. So this is especially true since things are changing as we test, which means that we might need to further edit our publishing profiles in other ways to best suit our needs and our discovery as Libris continues to add features. And I'll hand it back over to Jim.
Okay, thanks so much, Kaylin. So I'll just close with a review here of sort of what our work is right now and where we think we'll be heading. So essentially, as to recap, our process of going from Sinopia to Alma, we're using some normalization to conform to an expected structure for Alma, but the Alma system expects BibFrame and a little extra system-specific markup for the application. Now, the hybrid environment that we're targeting will include, discovery and MARC for the BibFrame resources, and because we're using Blacklight, but we also have plans to use graph data within knowledge panels inside of Blacklight as well. So that concludes our talk, and thanks so much for your attention.
Great, thanks, Jim and Kaylin. Okay, TJ.
I need please share.
Jim, I think you might still be sharing. There we go.
Thanks. One second. Hello, everyone. For this segment, I'm just gonna talk about how we can express relationships between works in Sinopia, and you can see that the title of this talk is a little bit slightly different from the advertised event. The event advertisement is because there's something happened for the past 3 weeks after I submitted. After I submit my proposal, and it turns out things change a little bit. So I think I'm gonna kind of widen the scope a little bit rather than just simply talking about preceding title and how to handle preceding title and succeeding title. And I hope that this will be entertaining and educational at the same time. Right. So serial catalogs know that we have lots of different kind of work relationships that we have to express that between serial works. And some of the relationships are horizontal and the other one kind of vertical relationship. And in the MARC cataloging environment, we actually have different MARC tag to specify that this different relationship, right? So here's that on the right, you can see, I get a screenshot from the MARC 21 of typographical format. And these are pretty much the tags that serial catalogs constantly use to express different kind of work relationship. And in MARC environment, we use different MARC tags and also the second indicator to really express different relationship. And some of the example, I put some of the example here. There are some 770s and 772. And on what it's very clear that, what's the relationship between the work you are describing and other works that somehow relate to it. So this is how we handle it in the MARC environment. So how about Sinopia? And in Sinopia, there's an area that you can totally do this kind of thing. And what I'm showing you now is a screenshot of the PCC BF work serial template. And this template is developed by the PCC metadata application profile working groups that use, of course, BIBFRAME to develop this template. And the template I'm showing now is actually in the stage environment. So it's slightly different from the development environment that I will explain a little bit later. So stage environment is the one that the PCC group is really working on. And then the area that really related to the related work, very obvious, is the related work serial part. And the class is under the BF, that's the Library of Congress BIBFRAME extension specific for the relationship. And here you can see that there are lots of different things that you can click through. And the first one, this one is pretty straightforward. You simply just, so when you say search related works, that you click the plus button, it will allow you to do a title search or URI search. If you know the URIs of the other work, you can actually search it and create some kind of, grab the data from there. Yeah. And the interest for this presentation, I'm gonna just focus on especially relationship designator and a little bit about the rest of the area, like observed work and continuous work kind of thing. So in terms of the first one is the relationship term part. This is part that I talk about the new development. So these are new things that we just implemented about 3 weeks ago. And currently, if you want to build a relationship, find a relationship, you can actually just click the drop-down menu. There's an arrow down here, and you can see all the terms that are there. There are over 100. I think there are 154 terms. And all these terms are actually from the Library of Congress linked data service. So it's not something that we make up. So it's actually something that we grab from the Library of Congress website. And as you can probably already notice that there are lots of terms that are really not related to serial, right? The first few, like abridged, all these kind of things, because this relationship kind of term list is actually encompass all kinds of relationship. So as you can see here, there's something to do with the music work, some about audio, books, so even some of them is about instance, right? Different formats, for example, print versus electronic or microphone, that kind of thing. So in order to find the right term, a catalog is actually have to scroll down or just simply type the first word, and the system will take you to the first word, the terms that have that first word, that match the alphabet. And one thing to note is that this list, the terms on this list is actually slightly different from RDA. I shouldn't say slightly, but different from RDA terms. Both, when I say RDA term, it's both the official RDA and also the original RDA term. So they might, for catalogs who are familiar with the original RDA relationship designator term, they might have to do some translation in their brain when they are trying to find the term. So this is something that very interesting. The other one is that you'll see that under the relationship designator, there are a bunch of predefined terms, such as like observe, continuous, this kind of thing. So these are the terms that if you have specific relationship that are written on the list, you can actually choose it. And once you choose it, you can type in some literal. So personally, I'm not 100% sure what's the purpose of it, but I can imagine there might be some scenarios that, the RDA term might not, the relationship designator from the Library of Congress linked data service might not be so preferable friendly. So we want to put additional term, maybe you can put it here, something like that. So that might be a use case. But personally and locally, I have been struggling to figure out what to put there. So my strategy is that simply just ignore it since it's not doing anything, because the other things I'll have to say that, as you can see, the data you put there is literal, so there's no URI. So is that really very linked data friendly? I'm not 100% sure. So if I don't have to do it, I'll probably just skip this one. Anyway, and here's an example of like a preceding title versus like a succeeding title. So OAT Prep Plus is the succeeding title of OAT. And so in Sinopia, you can actually just do a search of in this case, I have to find OAT. I search OAT and I find the match. And once I select the match, the system will automatically populate the URIs and also the label. So the label is from the title, the work title from the other work. So as you can see here, but of course you can adjust if you want, I mean, the label part. And in some case, if your work is not really in Sinopia, you might be able to, if you know the URI, you can actually just put in the URI manually. I think you can do that. It's possible. And the next one is the relationship designator part. That this part that you can just, in this case, it's continuation of. So I simply just click the drop-down menu and find the thing and select it, and it will just pop up like this. Pretty straightforward. And so I appreciate that Jim mentioned about the RDF. So once you do this part, human-friendly display part, you can actually look at the RDF display kind of iteration. So it will be down here. So pretty. So that's pretty much how it works when you want to do kind of expressing relationship between works, particularly in serial, in Sinopia. However, there's a little bit of things, some additional things that I should mention. So for this linked data focus group experiment, we are actually using development Sinopia environment. So the development Sinopia environment actually is specific for this. Well, I shouldn't say, well, there are lots of other kind of players using it, but for PCC, the group that developed the template, they are actually not good data there. I mean, they don't make change in the development environment. Instead, they use the stage environment. So the change that I talk about, the drop-down, the beautiful drop-down menu is actually still not available in development because, as I say, it was just deployed 3 weeks ago. So I think eventually, once that template get embedded to the development environment, and you can do the similar thing. And so at the moment, if your catalogers really want kind of build a relationship, they actually have to manually, they have to type the term manually. So in this case, this is an example that, you open the version, you just simply type it in. And if there's already predefined term, you maybe just type it there. So here, just as an example, I put a preceding title. I don't know, it looks pretty. It's something to put it there. So later, and in the, it actually, once you put into Alma, it's actually just showed up like this. It's down here. And then the other things that I mentioned a little bit earlier, the current drop-down menu term has 154 of them. So it's a little bit too challenging to use, especially try to kind of analyze and translate at the same. So I'm currently working on a draft that will do a little bit mapping to help catalogs who are familiar with Mark to quickly to find the term they want. And so if you're curious, I have really made these documents that are open to everyone and people can make comment or something like that. So something like this. So it will really help catalogs to really identify the term from the list faster. I hope that's the whole idea. And the other thing is that currently the work relationship part is not displaying in Primo yet, but it's definitely something we have to report to Libris, the development team, so they will be able to work on it later. So anyway, that's pretty much my very quick spiel. So thanks for your attention. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, TJ. Thanks to all of our presenters today. And we have a number of great questions in the Q&A. So I know a number of them came up as different people were talking, but I want to encourage all of our panelists that if you have comments on them, please chime in. I'll start with some that came in, Adina, during some of your part of your presentation about info cards. So there were questions about whether there would be info cards on entities other than people. So yeah, we'll start with that. Sort of
Okay, so the answer to that is yes. Yes, they're not part of, they're further down the line in the roadmap for obvious reasons. I think the person page is more established and we can expand it easily to other authorities based on BIF, allowing us to make it a broader collection of authorities that are combined into creating this person page.
Great, thanks. And there's another question about the Wikipedia and Wikidata and relying on that when it, as we know, it can be edited by anyone, including librarians. But I think, so there's a question about that specifically, and I guess I'm wondering, like, what other sources of data is actually we're looking at other sources of data to pull in for that.
Okay, so yeah, so again, as I mentioned, we're not looking only at Wikidata, Wikipedia information standalone, because we want reliable information. So we are combining it and prioritizing between LC information, which is reliable, together, and expanding it with additional information that is available in Wikidata, but it won't be separate. You'll be able to see the information as a whole, and we will be taking the more reliable information, obviously, from Library of Congress records.
Great, thank you. This is maybe a question, a clarification of the scope of the focus group. There is a question about the record editing that, because it's taking place in Sinopia. And so, like, what sort of feedback, a little bit more about, like, what sort of feedback is actually we're looking for from the focus group, because it's not about Sinopia editing.
Fair enough. Okay, so again, the cataloging itself is done in Sinopia based on based on PCC templates, and we first of all, I think the focus group creates a lot of feedback also for the formats of Sinopia and the usability of Sinopia, which is important not from my side, but important for the Sinopia side of the participants. But in addition, we also are testing and requesting feedback on the different workflows in Alma. We've developed workflows to support BIBFRAME as part of the daily management workflows that are used in Alma, regardless of the record format. So we've added BIBFRAME to support as another format that's supported, and we need the feedback to test to see whether all the fields are displayed properly in Primo or in Blacklight, and for example, or if you can add orders, inventory, fulfillment, any other workflow that is needed, publishing records. So that's the feedback that we're getting from the focus group at the moment.
Great. Thank you. Thanks. Another one for you, Adina, it has to do with plans beyond BIBFRAME. There's a question about the University of Washington, as well as many other institutions, especially, well, obviously University of Washington is in the US, but a lot of BIBFRAME is very US centric, I guess I could say. So what are the plans for going beyond that? Is, Ex Libris considering making it possible to use Sinopia with the RDA schema?
Yeah, so again, when I mentioned that we're looking at all the different steps and phases, one of the main conditions and thoughts that we're thinking about is how can we support additional formats seamlessly or as easy as possible, because to develop a whole workflow, once for BIBFRAME, once for LC BIBFRAME, once for RDA, RDF, any other format available will be a lot more complicated. And the idea is to find a way to seamlessly add additional formats to the workflow. We are still ping-ponging thoughts about this around the focus group and in other places as well. If anybody, whoever, I don't know who posted the question, has any thoughts on this, I'd be happy for them to reach out and discuss this further.
Great, thanks. I want to bring some of our other panelists into the Q&A. So, Caitlin, there is a question specific to you, asking they want to know more about how you're adding item-specific information to Alma and then including that in the MARC that gets published.
Sure. So in the publishing profiles, there's a data enhancement tab, and there's a number of different enhancements you can do. The two I've been playing around with the most are physical holdings enrichment and physical items enrichment. So you can see those if you go into the publishing profile. I think right now it's a little bit easier to add holdings information. You can map holdings fields and subfields directly to bibliographic fields and subfields, and have that information display in the MARC that way. But you can also map tags that are in the Alma item record. And I'll say all that with the caveat that I think Ex Libris is also working on some more solutions for this that might be a little bit better. But currently, that's been the most functional for us.
Great, thank you. I do want to provide one clarification. Thank you, Nancy. The BIBFRAME is not US centric. Actually, the primary implementers right now are in Europe, but it is. I do want to clarify, but it is also not the only implementation. There are a lot of people who are going with things that are not BibFrame. So we know BibFrame is not the only option out there. It's not the only flavor, I guess you could say, of RDA. Let's see. There's a little bit more on info cards, Adina. It's a question about sort of if you could talk a little bit more about corporate bodies and families and works and how then those might be.
All right, so the first, again, as I said, the first phase is the person page. I'm not saying we're stopping with that. We will expanding it also to additional authorities. That's one track of expanding it. And the second track will be also expanding it to other topics or other entities that would need to be covered, including having a geographic page. And again, combining it with the questions about good quality information, it all depends on where we can get the information from and combine it so it can be presentable. So I guess it's a combination of understanding how we can incorporate the information and present it properly.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. TJ, question for you about whether the relationship terms are available with IRIs in idea.loc.gov and if the template would accept that, or what you've just sort of what you've played around with that.
Wow, this is a very good question. I actually don't know the answer. All I know is that idea.loc.gov that for each relationship term there's a URIs attached to it, but other IRI, I'm not 100% sure. But in terms of the template part, you actually can enter your own URIs or even IRI over there and also label terms. So I don't know. That's a very good question. Maybe I need to talk to probably Nancy Loriman later. But thanks for the question, Laura.
Thanks. Questions about the again, Adina, you might want to start out with this, but I don't know if any of our other folks might have comments about records created via BibFrame. Are they local records in Alma, or what are sort of the plans for community zone records? And I guess I would also be interested from the other panelists, like what do you see as the, I guess, pros and cons and of that, or how that might work?
Yeah. So again, at the moment, we are working on local records and are also starting to see how we can support BibFrame records as part of the network zone. The CZ depends a lot on vendors and what resources they provide. And of course, we're keeping our ear to the ground and looking to hear and see when vendors will be also transferring and transitioning the records to BibFrame, and we will plan accordingly.
Great, thanks. I'd be interested if our other panelists have, or people in the chat, if you want to chime in about thoughts on, I guess I would be curious if our BibFrame or linked data records, are those different than other MARC records that we might have in the community zone or network zone, or would they be treated the same way? Like, what do people?
Well, I guess from one perspective, I think once you have like a work in your Alma, there's no need to like redescribe a work again. So there's a potential to see some efficiencies there. So that's kind of an exciting thing for adopting BibFrame works in your Alma environment. So that's something to experiment with, is to what extent you can realize some efficiency gains for not having to redescribe something.
Yeah. TJ, did you have any thoughts since you put your camera on?
So one of the things that I have been thinking about, also talking with my team, is that, is that really necessary? Well, is that such a horrifying thing to see a description? Well, a resource has a description in multiple format, like MARC versus BibFrame. in the same repository. In this case, maybe the Alma image, Alma IZ or even NZ. And I think the answer is that I actually don't think it's such a big deal because we are already doing this kind of thing for many, many years, right? We have resources described in RDA, DCRMB, and there's a mark record there already. And there's also coupling core record over there. Oh, yeah, it's just a little bit hard for us to really get beyond that. How about just, beyond, because we've been using mark record for so many years, we just think about the delivery should be in mark format. But actually, and the other thing is that if there are duplicate description in different formats for one resource, that can be resolved by discovery side, right? Maybe Primo will be able to dedupe, and this is something that my team definitely talked to Adina about. Is the possibilities that do some dedupe, show only one version or whatever. And I think that's a little bit separate from actually the cataloging practice. And also, so anyway, so that's just my little kind of, I'm not sure it's relevant, but that's my 2 cents on this.
Thanks. Yeah, people have said in the chat how it, sometimes it can create, I guess that depending on where the records live, I think somebody mentions having duplicate records for the same resource in Alma, like creating load and inventory problems. I think, sort of response time, because we still also need Alma to be, have a fast response time in terms of, things loading in Alma and that sort of thing. I know that's a concern a lot of places have. Let's see. I think we've gotten to most of the question. Jim, do you want to answer about rare book? I see you're starting to type, but
Oh yeah.
if you've done
Well, I
anything with rare book
think,
cataloging.
Yeah, so I understand there's been some progress towards some resource templates, profiles in Sinopia. So I would say the place to keep track of that is the Rare Material Affinity group. And I dropped the chat in there, but I'll put the link in the Q&A, but I just dropped it again in the chat.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I know that for the focus group, for the focus group specifically, people are testing out a variety of formats and languages, and that's also part of the work of the focus group. Is, I know my institution, Northwestern, wants to see how diacritics work. And different options with that, and are looking at maps and other types of stuff. So, do we have any questions we did not get to? We'll include somehow in the recording that goes out, or follow up with folks. Does anyone have any final comments that they didn't get to make for our panelists? I want to thank everyone for attending today. Again, the recording will go out soon, and stay tuned for announcements about ELUNA Learns, as well as the ELUNA conference, which is in May. I'll put a plug in for that now, and also I want to encourage everyone who is here today to also consider presenting at ELUNA. It's a great opportunity, and for people to talk about something you've done, or with linked data, or with anything else. We're always looking for presenters there. Yes, and the proposal deadline was extended, so you have until I believe after the new year now to do that. I especially want to thank our panelists, Adina and Jim and TJ and Kaylin, and the whole Zhao and the whole linked data group, because it's just a great group to be working with. So stay tuned for more. Zhao, did you want to wrap anything up as our leader?
Yeah, I just saw re-emphasize one thanks to all the presenters and for the wonderful presentations, and also for all the participants. We appreciate you sending questions and the comments, and also thank you for supporting our group's work. With that, we're just at 10 o'clock Pacific time. I think it's a perfect a 1 hour program, and I think we are done. And one more thing, in April we will have another community meeting, which will be announced once we have more information soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.